Greetings, Andy here again, and this is my regular monthly roundup of new releases I've got in the previous month. So here we are, beginning of April, and I'm going through 6 new releases that I got during March, and there's a really good mix here. And 2 of the albums, one of which was a complete surprise, go straight into my top 3. So I'll come to those in a minute. First of all, I'm not going to say any more than I said in the intro, which had absolutely nothing to do with the records about the delusional shit show that has been launched on us all. Anyway, moving on. This is all about the records and not about the shit show. So let's start with an absolute fabulous album, and it is Steven Wilson and his new album called The Overview. Now, this is, I sort of had a look on Discogs to try and work out what number this was, but it's too difficult. It's his umpteenth. He's had loads. And this, I think, you know, particularly after a few listens, is one of his finest. It's a slightly Marmite, you know. I know a lot of people who haven't taken to it, but I think it is one of his finest. It's very ambitious, even though it's quite a short album. It's a concept album. It's very proggy and even cinematic in scope, I would say. Now, the concept is all about the feelings that astronauts get in orbit of Earth, looking back at Earth, which typically sort of comes in two approaches. One is about the beauty of Earth, and then their individual connection to it and all the people on it and so on. So looking back at it. And the second is just, you know, how tiny and inconsequential it is in the vastness of space and the universe, and then the feelings which come with that. So the album consists of two sides. Well, obviously it consists of 2 sides. It's a single LP. People have said 2 tracks, but it's not. It's 2 suites. On side A is the longer one, 23 minutes long, Objects Outlive Us, which is more about the sort of looking down at the Earth and the beauty of it. And that's got 8 tracks on it. The second side is called The Overview, shorter at 18 minutes, which has 6 tracks. And this is more about the infinity of space and the, you know, and how small Earth is as a dot in it. The first side, I would say, is slightly more proggy than the second side, and it features which track is it? Objects. Meanwhile, the third track, which I'll play a little sample of, has lyrics written by Andy Partridge of XTC fame, and they are very different from the others. The lyrics are all about almost the minutiae of everyday life on Earth, queuing at the bank, and you know, stuff which the astronauts might be thinking of, and it's not sung by him, it's sung by Wilson. The second side is sort of slightly more electronic, but and takes more listening to. You know, the first side is very immediate. The second side, I actually slightly prefer, but it's taken more listens to, and it opens up with a narration by Wilson's wife, what's her name? I've forgotten. Rotem, narrating the size of various planets and nebulae. And let me read it out, because it actually says some of those on the front. I'm not going to read it all, but just to give you an idea. So it starts off: size beyond 1 megameter, 10 to the power of 6. Ganymede, Callisto, Wolf 359, size beyond 1 gigameter, 10 to the power of 9, and so on. It goes through that, which sounds a bit weird, but it really fits with it. And you know, the second side, while starting quite electronic, does morph into that more conventional proggy sort of guitars and so on, and finishes. The last track really is it's not epic. There are no sort of really long epic tracks on here. There's a lot of variety. This could well be my number 1 of the year. It's certainly in my top 3. and we'll see how the year goes. But Wilson, let me put those over there. Wilson is an absolute master of producing surround sound mixes, and I got the Blu-ray as well, which contains 5.1 surround sound plus an Atmos, and I have to say the Atmos mix was not better than the vinyl stereo. Is a different experience, and it's a really, it works really well because you've got it all around you. Technically the stereo coming through the big speakers at the front, gives you that sort of conventional proggy sound, whereas this is more cinematic, and they're both brilliant in their own way. And it's very resplendent on, what do they call it? Mint green vinyl, single LP, as I say.
We bicker on with our fences and borders, but best not to think about that. It's better to live without fights. And now in her own wedding bed, a lady will dream that her husband is dead. Of course he's alive, he'll be home around 5. Still silence arrives when a nebula dives into our Milky Way.
So my second one is a real find. I'm not much of a folkie, to be honest. I don't really buy much folk and I don't listen to it. But every now and then something comes along which really wows me and really grabs me. Now the last one was in 2023, towards the end of the year. I discovered, which had been out for a little while at that point, I discovered the album by Larkham, called False Larkham, the Dublin band. And it was just wow. I mean, there was some conventional folk in there, but it was like really heavy, cutting edge, brooding. And there's another one for come out, which I say is similar. It's not similar to that album, but it's similar in impact. And it's an album called Wasteland by Jim Ghedi. And as I say, I've never heard of him because I'm not really a folkie. But I read a couple of reviews about it, just happened across them and thought, that sounds interesting. Streamed, 2 or 3 tracks and was left wowed. So I bought the album and I've really listened to this a lot. And every time it just gets me. So this is straight into my top 3. It could be number 2. You know how things go, because we got Mogwai from January is superb as well, and it's more listening. So those 3 really. So this is a surprise because there's some great other albums, but it is magnificent. This is sort of relentlessly dark and brooding. It's got that, it's quite heavy. There's plenty of drums in there. It's not, I'd say heavy in relative terms. It's not easy listening folk. It's difficult to describe it. It's one of those ones you've really got to listen to, but listen to it 2 or 3 times. His vocal style doesn't make the lyrics really stand out. I wouldn't say he's mumbling, but it's just a slightly indistinct vocal style. He's English. He comes from Sheffield in Yorkshire, but the album is very nicely presented. It's got all the lyrics, which are quite extensive on the inside there to read, and they're mostly written by him. There's a couple of sort of like traditional English folk songs which he's adapted and so on, and he's also got some of the people. He's even got the singer from False Larkham doing some backing vocals on there. It came with a hype sticker. It's one of those where I ought to say before I read that, there's 10 tracks on there. It's a classic 10 tracks, 5 on each side, single LP. And it says, Wasteland, Jim Ghedi, intense, brooding, at times apocalyptic, and remarkably vast. And that really sums it up in one sentence. A profoundly bold sonic statement that is some of the most rich, far-reaching and ambitious work that Ghedi has created today, pushing the boundaries of what folk music can be in 2025, just as Larkham did in 2023. And it features members of Landless, or I don't know, and Cinderwell, equally don't know. A 9 out of 10 by Onkar, Yorkshire's Folksmith, ruminative, storm-tossed masterwork. And that sums it up. It is utterly superb. It's just on plain black suitably, and definitely one I recommend if you want to be challenged. Now, the next one is a band which has been around for sort of 20 odd years, and I've got 2 or 3 of their early, well, I've got 3 actually of their earlier work. This is their 6th album, and it is The Horrors and Nightlife. So they're an English goth band. It's gothish, you know, they dress a bit gothy, and the music typically is quite dark and brooding. This is their 6th album. As I say, I've got sort of 3 of their earlier ones, a couple on CD and one on MP3. This album, Nightlife, is slightly more restrained than those earlier works, I would say, in the sense that the guitar and synths are pushed back slightly. No, I don't mean to say they aren't there. They are absolutely there, but what they've done is push those back a little bit and allowed the bass and the drums to come further to the fore. And that actually works quite well. The singer is called Faris Badwin, and he has a sort of languid baritone, which it works really well with. You know, this is a cracking album. I reckon this will be quite high up in my year end. But as I say, The Horrors are a band I do like. They hail from Southend in Essex. And this particular version of it is quite unusual because I think it's got the full body on it, because I think most of them just have the top half. This was a Rough Trade exclusive, 500 copy limited edition. It came also with a flexi disc with a demo on it, which I haven't listened to be fair. It's got a nice booklet with all the lyrics, though. They're sort of they're sort of sketchy lyrics, and I've not checked this because I've not actually looked at it, watched it or listened to it in the dark. But the album, the vinyl apparently is glow in the dark. But you know, I keep thinking to myself, I must try that when it's dark. But I never think about it. I've only actually listened to it during the day. So there you go. That's Nightlife. Okay, so next one is an old favourite band, and it's Jethro Tull, and a new release called Curious Ruminant. Now, it's a very long time since I've bought a new release Jethro Tull album, and by a very long time, I mean decades. I think the last one was in the 70s, actually. But I sort of saw a YouTube review of it, read a couple online, and they said they were all very positive. And I sort of listened to it and thought, I quite like that. I'm going to get it. Now, I confessed at the first listening of it, I thought it's okay. You know, enjoyable. I like it, but not going to bother my top 10 or anything. But the more I've listened to it, the more I've really enjoyed this album this year. And I've listened to it sort of 4 or 5 times. So far, and it will be out during the year. It's quite different from most of the other stuff I've got, so it's a comforting record. You know, it's sort of like, yeah, I don't think it's as good as their, you know, I'm not going to compare it to Aqualung and Thick as a Brick and Benefit and all those early stuff. It's really quite different to that, but it's very comfortable. It's a bit like warm comfort blanket in these mad times. Now, I saw Tull live about 20 years ago in the mid-00s anyway, and they were doing a tour and reprising the whole of Aqualung at the time. I don't know whether it was maybe it was much earlier, 2003, maybe. I don't know. But they were playing Aqualung, the whole of bits, and Ian Anderson's voice was really not up to it. It was a bit poor. But I mean, musically it was great, but his voice was disappointing because he just wasn't able to get those higher notes. On this album, he never attempts to, so he keeps within his old man's range. So it's quite slow compared to some of the earlier stuff, and it's much deeper. And it works really well, and it adds to that sort of that comfort one. It adds to and it also adds to the mood of the music, I would say. The dominant instrument on here is flute. Now, we always know Jethro Tull, Anderson plays the flute a lot, but on this album, the flute is just all over the album from front to back, and he plays it really, really well as well. You know, it's less of a, on most Tull albums, the flute is more of a sort of an occasional backing instrument, whereas I mean, obviously he's not singing it and playing it at the same time, but it's you know, usually when he's not singing, there's some flute in there. The songs are quite reflective, I would say, and you know, maybe even poetic. And quite, you know, the lyrics are quite telling as well. And I think it's sort of like, it feels like it's a more personal work to Anderson. So he sings quite a lot in the first person rather than the sort of third person storytelling of most of his early work. Sorry, there's 6 tracks on side 1. It's a single LP. Sorry, 3 on side 2. But that includes a sort of 17-minute, I'd say epic, but it's not an epic song. It's just a long song called Drink from the Same Well, which is really interesting and is the sort of centerpiece of the album. And it finishes on a much shorter one, a short track called Interim Sleep, which is quite emotional in the way it's presented and the wording. And it's really about the act of death, you know, the actual act of dying. And he's also talking in there about himself and what he might want. You know, it feels like he's talking about himself as well. Martin Barr, you know, the long-term guitar is no longer there, but I should look up the names. Ian Anderson, Jack Clark, electric guitar, does play it really well, and you know, and the musicianship on here is first class throughout. It's a nice album, you know, nice artwork on it. If you don't mind the strange mask on there, and it came with a really lovely booklet with all the lyrics on. It's got a forward from Ian on there, you know, talking about it and his thoughts on all the band and what they're playing, and then it goes through the each track with nice big font for people like me who don't have brilliant eyesight, lyrics, and it's as I say, it's such a comfortable one, and the lyrics are quite telling. I'm not going to go back to the shit show, but some of the tracks are you know are almost analogous, even if they're not. You know, like Puppet and the Puppet Master is the first one, which I play a little bit, and sing and We Drink from the Same Well. Don't poison your well, because you poison yourself as well as everyone else. So, enough said.
Holding chords on a blackboard stage, dangling from the strings, I twirl and face the music and the prompter and the wings. I am both willing puppet master also, with lofty expectations set to pull me to and fro.
So my 5th album of the mod, not the 5th, these aren't in order of preference, but I've just done the sort of bigger ones first maybe. But this is a debut. It's another fine debut from a young punk, you know, rock, but on the punky edge of it, band. You're a very young band, female-led, and they are called Hotwax. and the album is called Hot Shock. This is another discovery. It was the Rough Trade album of the month. So I get that every month, and it's always a surprise. They're quite often debuts. January's wasn't that brilliant, or was it February's wasn't that brilliant? February's wasn't that brilliant, but this is really good. They're a trio with a great name. This is Tallulah Sim Savage is on guitar and vocals. That's her. You can tell the difference because black hair and very, very red hair. And the very, very red hair is Lola Sam on bass, and then the guy Alfie Sayers is on drums. It's very conventional in that sense, but it's really, it's not. January's new one was another debut from a punk band, and that was the Lambrini Girls, and that had real attitude. This is much more conventional in the sense it's not really in your face to the same degree, but it's still enjoyable. It's nice punk. It's got that sort of slight attitude to it that you would expect. But they come from the south coast of England, so they went to school. The two girls met at school in Worthing, and Brits among us will have an image of Worthing as a posh seaside town. And then they met the guy Sayers at college in Brighton. So that's their world. As I say, it's a Rough Trade album of the month. It came with a single with a couple of demos on it, which again I haven't listened to yet. And it's very resplendent on orange vinyl.
I wanna feel the way you feel. I wanna see the way you see. I wanna think the way you feel. I gotta get a hold on me. She's got a problem. She's got real big problems. She's got a problem. Got real big problems ahead.
And my last album is another old favourite band, and it's My Morning Jacket, and the album is called Is. And this is another one where I've lost count of how many albums they produced, so it's their umpteenth. I've got a few of their earlier albums and a few live ones. I mean, they're very prolific live band. I think they tour the States continuously, and they've produced some really good live records. And usually the live records well, put it another way, the studio albums are much more subdued than the live ones. The same tracks are I could almost say so much better on the live one. The last few albums they produce I've listened to a couple of tracks and thought, nah, I'm not bought it. But this one had some great reviews. I listened to a couple of tracks and thought, yeah, I like that. They have produced. They usually self-produce. Jim Jones, the leader, the frontman, vocalist, lead guitarist, produces them. But they've brought in an external producer this time, and I think he's given them more focus and more balance. There's nothing in here. I mean, they've got their best album is called Z, which actually came out 20 years ago. 2025, and that has their best track, which is the absolutely epic, brilliant Don Dante, and that live. I've not seen them live because they only really tour the States, but from their live albums, that is absolutely superb. There's nothing on here which has those heights, but it's a really nice album, and there's some variety. If they hail from Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky, I believe. And it's good guitar rock, and it's not remotely country, but there is occasionally that sort of slight alt country feel, but mostly because they like a bit of steel guitar now and then. It's a nice album, and it's got how many tracks on there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, classic 10 tracks, 2 sides, and the vinyl is described as sea blue.
Everyday magic, the test of time you passed it, for the spell you cast is lasting, burning
I've also bought some reissues during March, so I'll do in a week or so. I'll do another update with those, because there's some interesting ones and some fairly serendipitous. I'll do a roundup of those as there's enough to talk about. So thanks for watching. Cheers.